The story revolves around Han, a young single mother living quietly with her young child in a makeshift home amid constant hardship. Han's life is a series of struggles, worrying about putting food on the table every day while trying to protect her child from the hardships she herself cannot avoid. Han possesses a quiet resilience, never complaining or lamenting, simply moving forward silently for her child. Just when it seemed there was nothing left to hold on to, Han encountered a kind-hearted family. There was Dan, a gentle, quiet man who always appeared when Han needed him most. There was Thanh, sincere, honest, and willing to roll up his sleeves to help with even the smallest tasks. And there was Miss Koa, a warm woman who treated Han like her own daughter, caring for her from meals to sleep. Their presence did not change Han's life overnight, but little by little, the darkness in her life gradually brightened. From meals with hot dishes, from a house patched up piece by piece, from the eyes of a child no longer afraid, when night fell, all were the result of unconditional love. What makes the story resonate with viewers is not the grand tragedies, but the very ordinary moments. A sympathetic glance, a timely helping hand, a simple phrase that warms the heart. Han was not saved by magic, but by human kindness, something seemingly small yet powerful enough to lift an entire destiny. Han's story is therefore not just the story of a single mother, but also a reminder that in the midst of life's storms, as long as there are people willing to stay and help, hope still exists. And it is from kind hearts like Dan, Thanh, and Miss Koa that Han learned to believe in life again, to believe that she and her child still deserve a warmer future. At first, Han's life seemed to warm up again. Than's father stepped in to persuade Han to stay with his family temporarily while her house was in ruins. Far away, Thanh still did not know what had happened. He wandered around silently, working and asking questions, hoping to find traces of Han. At home, Than's mother took Han to the market. The two of them chose new clothes for the baby, bought a baby walker, and took turns caring for the little one. These kind and caring gestures were like a silent apology from the family to Han. However, Han still did not know the truth behind it all. In Than's parents' eyes at that moment, it was Thanh who had caused Han's house to collapse. But the truth was completely different. Han's house was destroyed by her ex-husband, who had returned. He appeared and disappeared like a shadow, silently and terrifyingly. Only Thanh had witnessed everything, yet no one believed Than's words. Doubt and prejudice obscured the truth, leading to a series of serious misunderstandings that pushed everyone into heartbreaking paths. Rumors spread quickly through the neighborhood. People began to suspect Thanh was the one who demolished Han's house, because his father had seen him near the scene just before the rubble had settled. The real culprit, however, had vanished without a trace, as if he had never existed. Meanwhile, one afternoon, Han overheard a conversation between Than's parents. They claimed that Thanh had demolished Han's house to force her to leave, so they could sell the land. Those words were like a knife to Han's heart. She was stunned, unsure of what was true and what was false, feeling everything around her suddenly become strange and cold. Not wanting her benefactor's family to get into trouble because of her, and even less wanting to cause further trouble, Han chose to remain silent. That day, she quietly packed a few old clothes, cradled her child in her arms, and left a letter of apology on the table. In the letter, Han only said that she was very grateful to the family, but couldn't stay and bother them any longer. The mother and child left before dawn. Han took her child back to what used to be her home, now just a pile of rubble. Seeing that scene, her heart ached, but she refused to give up. Han took the remaining chickens to the market and sold them all. Each chicken fetched a few pennies, enough for her to buy some rice and vegetables, barely enough to feed her child. In the crowded market, Han sold the chickens while rocking her child to sleep in her arms. No one knew what that thin woman had gone through. Only Hen understood that from this moment on, she had to fight against everything herself, with her weak but determined hands, to protect her child and hold on to a glimmer of hope for the future. Meanwhile, Dan continued his search for Han. He traveled everywhere, asking everyone in every alleyway. Suddenly, Dan found Thanh asleep on his motorbike by the roadside. It turned out Thanh had been searching for Han all night and had fallen asleep from exhaustion. Dan woke Than up, and they sat by the roadside telling each other what had happened. Than insisted he hadn't vandalized Han's house. He said he'd seen a stranger secretly destroying it that night, and he'd tried to stop them but couldn't. The intruder had fled and disappeared like a ghost. Hearing this, Dan recalled everything he knew, compared the details, and gradually realized it was a deliberate act of vandalism by an outsider, not Than's doing. A gut feeling told Dieu Han would return to her old house, so he rushed there, but all he saw was his father standing silently beside the rubble. Strangely, the chickens Dieu usually helped Han care for were gone. Looking at the remaining traces, Dan understood. Han must have taken the chickens to sell at the market before leaving. Without hesitation, Dan immediately turned his car around and continued searching for Han. Before leaving, Dan recounted the whole truth to Tan's father, about the stranger who vandalized the house and about Tan's unsuccessful attempts to stop him. At this point, Tan realized with shock that he had misunderstood his son. His suspicions gradually faded, replaced by regret for not trusting Tan. Not long after Dan left, Tan returned to the ruins to find Han, but he only found his father standing there, his eyes different from before. His father looked at Tan for a long time and softly apologized. Tan's injustice was finally cleared. The two stood silently together amidst the rubble, without needing many words. A single glance was enough to understand that their father-son bond had been restored after days of misunderstanding and pain. Finally, after hours of searching, Dieu spotted Han at the end of the small market. She was sitting beside an empty basket of chickens, with only a few bamboo cages and her child asleep in her arms. Seeing Han, Dieu was overwhelmed with joy and ran to call her name. Han looked up, stunned to see Dieu standing before her. Dieu hastily recounted everything. About Than's failure to destroy the house, about the stranger who caused all the trouble, and about Than's unsuccessful attempts to stop him. He explained that Than had been misunderstood all this time. Hearing this, Han's eyes welled up with tears. She never imagined that while she silently endured, so many people had been secretly searching, worrying, and trying to clear her name. Dan gently took Han's hand, persuading her to return. He said the house might collapse, but human kindness couldn't be destroyed with it. Han looked at her child in her arms, then at Dan, feeling both sorrow and warmth in her heart. Finally, she nodded, tears silently falling. When Han returned, everyone was there. Than's father was the first to step forward, bowing his head and apologizing to Than and Han for his misplaced trust, which had led to such a situation. Than also stood silently, choking back tears as he admitted his fault for the misunderstandings. One by one, everyone offered their apologies. No one blamed anyone anymore, only sympathy and regret remained. That same day, everyone pitched in to clean up the rubble. Some picked up bricks, others cleared wood, and still others swept, working together seamlessly without needing instructions. Laughter mingled with sighs, but within them was a renewed hope. Each brick was rearranged, each plank erected, as if they were rebuilding not just a roof, but also the faith and humanity that had been buried by the misunderstanding. Although the culprit had not yet been found, everyone felt a great sense of relief. Than was no longer unjustly accused. He was now viewed with the same trust as before. His father had also changed completely, no longer suspicious or indifferent, but silently caring and inquiring about his son's well-being. Han no longer had to shoulder everything alone. She was now surrounded by people ready to lend a helping hand. She was less silent, and her eyes regained their faith. Everyone took turns holding and caring for Han's baby, the sound of the child's laughter echoing in the house being rebuilt, dispelling the desolation of the past. Dan, Than's parents, and the entire neighborhood joined hands, some contributing labor, others money. Each brick laid was not just for building a house, but also for mending the cracks in people's hearts. They understood that the most precious thing wasn't the new roof, but the trust that had been restored after painful misunderstandings.